So anyway, I imported these guys. You'll notice I made an animatic frame, and then I also made audio layers. And the reason I have two here is so that I can have different tracks. I have the talking layer and I have the background honking noise thing, so I can get those two playing at the same time. This is like a multi-track recorder. By the way, if you need things to be lower or higher, again, you'd click on the keyframe, come over, edit the sound, and you can see here I actually lowered the volume for the background cars, in part because I knew that the guy's talking, so that we want to hear the blah 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 higher or louder than the background noise. So you could do that, just drag these guys down. One's for the left channel, one's for the right, which is funny since it all gets output to mono with MP3 anyway by default. But that would set the different sound levels. So I put in different sound layers here, and again, these would be used for your final animation too, or they could be. If you have some dummy noises in here and then you want to put in a real loop, you know, just click on the keyframe where you put in your dummy noise. You would import your sound files in, and then you would just choose, let's say there'd be better cars in here. You would choose that from this group instead, and that would play that sound instead. Again, set it to stream, etc. So I set up audio for each one of these scenes. And then I pressed F5 so that I could extend the audio. Notice that this guy is going on a bit. If I come out here a little and just press F5, it extends just a little bit. The other cool thing about streaming I should mention, let's say you want to cut out this last little bit of audio. I can just highlight these frames, right click, and choose remove frames, and since it's set to stream, it's now going to stop earlier in there. So you can cut out ends of the audio just by doing it that way too. So that's one thing to keep in mind, at least the end part of it. It won't work for the beginning. If you trim off the beginning, I believe it'll just move the waveform. It'll just change the audio. So let me cut this out. Let's see. Let's try a test. So the waveform, what I'm thinking should do is kind of move this guy over. I'm going to just choose remove frames. Did I miss it? Yeah, it's not working the way I thought it would. But in any case, you can clip it off the end, but I would suggest just going in and when you're working with it, make those adjustments to the envelope if you need to cut out the beginning. So anyway, I set in the audio. I pressed F5 so that I could see the entire waveform, and that kind of dictates how long the scene's going to be. So again, that's where the help is to have the audio in here earlier. And then I just dropped in my image. Let's just pretend that I was going to use, I'll just delete this. So I would make a new layer, click on keyframe 1, go to my library, find my images, drag the frame over, drop it in, get it positioned on the stage. And since I already had this extend for that length, notice that this already came in and went for about 190 frames. If that doesn't work for you, you just click out to where you wanted it to end, press F5, and it extends it that amount. So that's how you set up the frames in here. A lot of my frames in the animatic are just stills like this, so that's it. That's what you do. I'm going to go to the next scene. So he steps out. Notice that this is a short little scene. He's still just talking. And then in this one, the car's coming towards him. Now in this particular case, I decided I just wanted to animate the animatic a little bit. In most cases you can just have stills, but if you need things to pass left to right, or you want to zoom in or zoom out, you can do that. I wanted to show the car coming towards us. Well, this is easy to do. You just click on the bitmap, choose Modify, Convert to Symbol. And I just made these graphics because I'm not doing anything complex with them. I just want them to move. So I made it a graphic. Once I made it a graphic, I'm able to right click and I was able to just create a motion tween. Right now it's already set up. So I set the motion tween. Let's just for the heck of it, I'm going to remove the tween. So if I click away, notice it's that gray bar again. So right now nothing's happening. So I just right click again, create a motion tween. All I'm going to do is go to the end, get my free transform tool. I'll zoom out a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm holding down Shift just so that it is constrained. And there we go. So it does the scaling. If I decide I want to get some of that rotation in there, I could do that as well while it's coming towards me. I don't know why a car would rotate, but it makes it a little more scary when it happens. And then finally, there we go. So that animates the drawing. So it's a really easy way to get a sense for something working, what would motion look like here. So if you want to animate simple moves, things zooming in, zooming out, passing across, just convert your drawing into a symbol and then just create a motion tween. The audio is dictating the length of the motion already. If you decide you want to trim some of that out, we could just grab that motion and scale it in, and it still will have the same movement. It'll just do it more quickly, or we can go the other way if we need it to be longer. So anyway, that's the setup for a motion tween in here. There's a couple of cases where that's happening. Most of them are just drawings. Where he wakes up here, this is kind of a series of drawings, so I wanted to show you this. This is just stair stepping. Again, first of all, I put in the audio. The audio track kind of dictates how long the thing goes. So again, all I did was open it up. When you lay it in, you just have one frame. So I just I knew I had talked for a while, so I just clicked further out, pressed F5, and found where the waveform ended. And then I just went ahead and selected those objects or those frames, remove frames, that brings it back. And that kind of sets up the rest of it. So that you don't have to hear all this audio, I'm going to just scroll a little bit. So all I did is I just put in one layer after another. In something like this, I made an animatic folder containing all of these layers, so that again, if we're making something on top of this, I can make new layers on top, and it's very easy for me to see the animatic, and then when I'm done using it as a template, I can just turn the animatic off. So that makes life easy. But again, this is just kind of a stair stepping. So I have this first layer where it's like this, and then I have the next layer. And the only reason I did this, you could set it up so that they would just come one right after another. The only reason I did this is in case I wanted to move these guys at all. Again, motion tweens, you can only have one item on the layer. That's the symbol that's getting tweened. So I broke these out just so that I have different layers to give me that flexibility. You don't have to. Notice that there is some overlap. That's okay. The top one, since I'm just layering images on top, is going to obscure whatever's below. So you don't have to be super careful about this lineup. But I have basically him opening his eyes. He closes them again just for a quick blink, opens them again, he blinks again, and he starts to look around. So I'm kind of figuring out that time. I was listening to the audio a bit. I think in here he's saying what's going on. So I wanted to have him look around while that's happening. And again, that's the beauty of being able to see the waveform in here. And then he kind of looks back at the screen, pardon me, dozes off a little bit, and then opens up again when there's like that, huh? So again, this is deciding right now to use all of the audio. Maybe because it went so long, I cut some of that stuff out. But this is how you would do a multi-layered scene instead of just a single layer. Just throw it inside of a folder and you're ready to go. Opens up, he's in heaven. It's another one of those staggered scenes. The one drag about this one is, again, since I have kind of this funny background audio, which is terrible, I apologize for you having to hear me sing, but I wanted to have the audio going on while we cut from him looking at the pearly gates to a shot of his face, looking back again to the pearly gates. So in a case like this scene's going to be more complex because I'm going to have to move characters on and off the stage. It's not a big deal. It's only 275 frames, so it's more manageable than having to deal with 1,000 frames and finding all of this stuff. But even in this case, I have an animatic with 4 layers showing through. So that's the walkthrough. You basically have these different layers. I incorporated different audio layers if I needed to have multiple tracks. In this case, I wanted to start with the devil zoomed out, so you'll notice that here's my stage. I'm just clicking this little rectangle which shows us outline view, and you can see it starts with his mouth and then it pulls back to him sitting here, and then the rest of the shot is static of him just sitting here. Just to have a little bit of a reveal, I thought that might be kind of fun. Again, you can kind of visualize each of these frames. And again, if I need to edit something, let's say this needed to be shorter, maybe he says yes, and it just cuts quickly to this. I'm just holding down Shift and selecting those frames, right-clicking, removing frames, and now, even though there's scenes, there's 5 more scenes after this, they come up and cut right into this. So that's, again, huge advantage. So I went through and laid out the whole thing. I think the last one is the one where I had probably the most animation. Again, it's just this layer of him falling, and it is a little more complex just because I made a tween. So again, I went ahead and converted that to a graphic so that I could do a shape tween on it. Initially, I just set it up to last a certain amount of time and figured out what that time was, and then I did the motion afterwards. So that's what I would recommend for your animatic. First set in the shot and figure out what your next cut is going to be. So I wanted to still show the end while you hear him going ah, so that when he squishes right at the end, the end is showing on here. And then I wanted to underline the end, that it is done. This guy's over, right? So that's why I put everything into that scene. Again, it's not that complex. We just have him falling away, so we'd have a couple of graphics there, and then we put in the end as another drawn layer. So I hope that my walkthrough here on this has been helpful in terms of why you would make an animatic and the ease of it. I think I'm making it more complex because I'm talking about some other things on the way here. But really what you should be getting out of this is the sense of how long your whole animation will last. And again, with the audio, it helps you kind of understand that. So another way you could put this together is just put it together visually and then get the audio in to match the visual. So that's another way that sometimes people will record. In the sample that I provided you, I actually did that in a piece of software called Toon Boom Studio rather than Flash. But what I did is I did all of the animation first, and I set it to 30 seconds. And then in that program, and you can do this in Flash too, you would just export this. I'm going to export out a video, and I just made a QuickTime video. And then in the sound editor I was using, it was kind of a cool sound editor. You could have a video as a little window, and you could watch the video and insert sounds as you watch different parts of the video. So I had the little movie running, and all those little sound effects and stuff I added while I was watching the video go on. So that's another way of doing it, or you just bring in the video or the audio first. I guess it depends on what's more important to you, the audio or the visuals. In this case, I used the audio first, and I came up with an animation that was much too long. Might be better for me to set it up as 20 to 30 seconds and then record my audio to fit. It's up to you. Either way works. I think it just kind of depends on how you put it together. Animatics get used all the time by industry. Big, I watched Finding Nemo, how they made, behind the scenes on Finding Nemo. They had the whole thing drawn out, storyboards, hundreds of storyboards, and then they put it in and timed it all out, and they actually had all of the talent voiced in as well. So they figured out everything with the animatic before they ever took it to production, so that when it's in production, they're not spending time building sets or building parts of sets. Even with 3D, I mean, you have to create a model and texture it and all that. They didn't spend any extra time having to do that because they'd done all the editing ahead of time. They knew exactly what they needed to get by the time they went to production. So this animatic will be helpful for our project, but it's also helpful just as a visualization tool in general. Since we're using Flash, it makes sense to have the animatic in Flash. Lots of people will use After Effects or some other program, but since our final output for our class is Flash, it makes sense just to use this and then just make scenes, layers just on top of it. So I hope this was helpful. Thanks a lot.